covered a pump and dump scheme linked to that hack of JPMorgan accounts. The security scheme has tentacles, it says, in Russia, Israel, and the U.S. As you mentioned, 4 people have been arrested in Israel and in Florida and reveal a complex securities fraud scheme that was tied to those hacks, not only of JPMorgan, but other financial institutions. Officials are saying a 5th person remains at large. These headlines just coming across. Apparently, these folks were arrested this morning and represent the culmination of a months-long investigation. It involves several friends who met more than a decade ago at Florida State University. Apparently, in the indictment here, one of these friends is now living in Israel. Another person are charged with securities fraud in a plan to pump up the value of low-volume stocks. The 2 people arrested in Florida are charged with running an unlicensed money-remitting business related to the scheme. So, fascinating story here. It looks like behind that enormous hack of JPMorgan Chase and other financial institutions. We'll bring you more developments as we get them. But interesting here. And again, this hack revealed just about a year ago, coming up in August, Mark.
All right, Julie Hyman, our senior markets correspondent, joining us from the breaking news desk. Carrie Geiger has been following this story. Carrie, first, thank you for your time today. I know you're in the middle of this breaking news. Talk to me about pump and dump.
Well, it's a common and it's an old school scheme. You know, we saw boiler rooms doing this back in the 80s and 90s. I think the Wolf of Wall Street could probably be, you know, some form of that was happening. But basically, you either get investors, you know, the way they used to do it, they would call, you know, kind of unwitting people on the phone, cold calls, and get them to invest in these low volume, most of the time they're penny stocks. And then as more and more people pump money into these stocks, then basically the fraudsters or the criminals then sell those off and profit from the stock that they're already holding in this. So it's a common securities fraud. Now, what we're seeing now as this story unfolds, of course, we'll have more details, is you're seeing a pivot away from the old school pump and dump to now one that appears to be tied to a major hack of a U.S. bank.
Carrie, when this story broke, when the hack broke, what we were hearing from JPMorgan was the Russians did this. We got information that perhaps this was some sort of overseas thing that happened.
Right, and it looks like, although this is developing, there's a little bit more to the story than that. And as we kind of go through the indictment and see more details, I think we're going to see that there's more to the story than just the Russians getting in there and hacking it. It appears to be basically a criminal enterprise. Now, the people arrested today were not arrested for the hack of JPMorgan. They were arrested for some of them, not all, obviously want to make sure we're careful here, for basically setting up this pump and dump scheme with the aid of information related to or linked to various hacks and going in and getting you know, information from banks.
Carrie, the story that we have on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg terminal, I love that it's so well written. It says a modern computer crime tying 2 former college buddies to a multi-layered criminal organization with tentacles reaching Moscow, Tel Aviv, and West Palm Beach. So as you mentioned, this is not your father's criminal enterprise.
Right.
This is 2015 alleged criminal enterprise.
Yeah, and you're going to see a lot of really good, interesting stuff coming out of the reporting here. So we look forward to keeping everybody as updated as possible as we kind of move along. So.
All right, Carrie Geiger joining us. And just to update that story again, it's on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg terminal. Law enforcement authorities arresting 4 people in Israel and Florida, revealing what's called a complex securities fraud scheme tied to those computer hacks of JPMorgan Chase and other financial institutions. Officials saying that a 5th person remains at large, and the arrest, the culmination of a months-long investigation of several friends, as our Julie Hyman mentioned, who met more than a decade ago at Florida State University and are linked by an FBI memo to one of the largest U.S. bank hacks